Hello, Coachella Valley, and welcome to Small Business Headquarters. I'm your host, Katie Stice, CEO at the Rancho Mirage Chamber of Commerce, and this series really exists just to help businesses and nonprofits throughout this last year. And we're continuing to show up and make sure that you have the support, information, and guidance that you need because recovery is going to take a while. So we're in it together. Today we have an incredible guest. You may recognize her from other shows or even last week she was on sharing with us. Please give a warm welcome to Karen Sloat from Law Office of Karen Sloat. Welcome back, Karen.
Thank you, Katie. Back again.
Thanks for being here. And today I know you really want to help businesses understand some new laws that are being rolled out. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes, there were about 30 new laws that were signed last September. They came into effect and affected employers and employees. What I thought today, Katie, I would hit three of them, the three key ones, and then answer any questions you might have, just so employers have the top of the top.
Yeah, very good.
So the three most important, I think, there's the COVID regulation. We briefly touched on that last week, but at www.dir.ca.gov, there are COVID regulations required as of November 30, 2020. Again, I may have mentioned last week, we have the requirement of a COVID prevention plan. That is part of your injury illness prevention plan that all employers must have. And these CPPs or COVID prevention plans are required for every employer with one employee or more. Those include 12 specific criteria, and every employer, Katie, needs to do an assessment of risks, implementation, training of their employees with signatures, as I may have mentioned, from the employees, and remedies in the workplaces. And those must be done, again, as of basically December 1 last year. So if you haven't done them already, the key tip is get those done now. Get your COVID prevention plan in place in a binder, ready for presentation, because the citations are being issued by the compliance officers and they're walking around asking to see your plan. So that's critical.
Yeah, that's the first one. And I do think there are quite a few people behind. And if someone's not sure where to start on that, they can look to this website for that resource, or they can call someone like you for that resource. Where should they go to begin?
Great question. You can certainly go to that website. You can try to prepare your own plan. They do have some samples and they have the 12 criteria. Our office is providing those COVID prevention plans at a small fee, and it comes with the binder and all the documents, the signature page, and even a video training for all the employees, so you don't have to figure that out yourself. I know that some insurance carriers are also providing those for their employer clients, Katie.
Oh,
so that's
great.
possible.
We just want to make sure everyone gets covered. So this is such an important reminder for people so that they don't get hit with compliance officers later and fines, and really so that everyone is taking care of their employees at the end of the day and making sure they've got all the protocols in place. So that's a really great piece of information. What are some other laws that are out there that you think are really significant for folks to know right now?
The biggest one, it was kind of a shocker, was the California Family Rights Act. Used to apply to employers with 50 employees or more, and now it applies to every employer with 5 employees or more. And that allows, even in a small business, any employee to take off up to 12 weeks of leave. That's without pay. However, the 12 weeks could be for taking care of grandma or grandpa, or some other non-medical reason, because the definitions were expanded to include more types, more reasons for leave, more relatives that would be covered by the employee's need for leave. And then if there are 2 parents working for the same company, they could conceivably each take 12 weeks off to bond with a new child, or to
Okay,
take care of a grandma and a grandpa. So
sure.
it's a pretty onerous law for small employers, and a lot of small employers have not changed their handbooks. They don't have the right posters on the wall. They haven't advised their employees that they have that new leave, which was required as of January 1.
Wow. And do you think that that length of time, it seems, pretty significant. Do you think that that's really in place? Did it have to do with the virus and COVID at all?
It doesn't appear that it did. No, it's just
Okay.
the Family Medical Leave Act is the federal law that allows the 12 weeks if you've worked a certain period of time, 12 months within a certain geographical area. The California Family Rights Act mirrored the FMLA for in large part, but suddenly it was applicable to small employers to help more employees take that leave that they want to for family or medical reasons.
Sure. Wow. Yeah, that could impact a lot of businesses in a multitude of ways. And I think that there's another really significant new law that you wanted to chat about as well. Tell us about that third one.
Yeah, many people have heard about AB 5, Assembly Bill 5, that changed the laws governing independent contractors. And that came out, as you know, January 1, 2020. Well, with all the lawsuits and Prop 22, now there have been developed about 106 exceptions to the AB 5 rules. You recall that was the ABC test, depending on whether your worker was under your control and had a separate business, all that. But now there are 106 exceptions, for example, for musicians, artists, professionals like accountants and physicians, that kind of thing. And if you meet the exceptions, even if you say, well, I'm hiring musicians, I don't need to make them employees, they still need to meet 11 criteria that are in another test within that law. So my biggest tip is don't be fooled and
Yeah.
think, oh, well, they're accepted, so I can just issue them a 1099, or they're a separate business. The separate business requirements, business to business, require another several factors to be proven. So don't rush, analyze them carefully, don't get caught, because there could be a lot of penalties.
There can be. And I know you've helped us through understanding independent contractors. And so I'm glad to hear that there are more exceptions now because um, I do think as an independent contractor, it is nice for the employee and the employer in many occasions. So it's nice to see that that can work out for everyone at the end and that there's been a little bit of flexibility because we found it, the chamber found it to be pretty rigid in the
Right.
beginning. So I'm really hoping that works out for folks and they're able to, make a living for themselves and do well for the businesses. And tell us a little bit about what some of the risks involved. When businesses really aren't up to speed, maybe on some of these new laws that come out, what are some of the risks to their business if they're not following?
Yeah, good point, Katie. Under those COVID regulations, there are reporting requirements. For example, reporting a COVID case within 1 day to public health officers. And if you don't, there can be citations and fines. Of course, there could be claims with any violation of that COVID regulation. If you don't have enough masks or you don't have enough air filtration, whatever, that could be claims by the employees that they're in an unsafe environment. That could lead to OSHA investigations and audits and inspections, and therefore shutdowns, which would be just terrible.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the employees can claim damages. And as far as the AB5, the contractor laws, if you don't classify people correctly, very carefully under AB5 and all of the exceptions, then you could be sacked with wages. I mean, if you've done it for 3 years, they can actually go back up to 3 or 4 years with a class action, um, depending on how you've misclassified your workers. We sure don't want that.
Not at all. And along those same lines, I mean, really, what's the best way for an employer to avoid any kind of claim? So, what advice would you really give to employers right now who maybe are hearing this for the first time, because they've been preoccupied with opening or closing or, all the other things that have been happening during this pandemic? What's the best thing for them to do to plan ahead and stay free of those claims?
Good. Yeah, I would say get the procedures in place, the plan in place, double, dot your I's and cross your T's. Do an audit of how your not only how your workplaces are, but how you're handling contractors, how you're handling leave, what's your paperwork, what do your handbooks say and your forms, your leave forms, that kind of thing. Just be really detailed in documentation. get everything up to snuff. And then after you do that, whenever someone complains, let's say about a COVID situation, about a condition in the workplace, even harassment, discrimination, any complaint, document it carefully. And of course, document the employee's conduct carefully so that you have a paper trail. I think that's going to be so critical as we're seeing lawsuit after lawsuit in my office against our employer clients because the employees are complaining. And as long as the employers have the documentation of what really happened and some witnesses, then they're in much better stead.
Well, I'm going to also put back on the screen is the website. And this website you said is going to connect employers directly with all of the new laws from this past year. Is that correct?
It probably doesn't have all of the new laws. It does have the COVID prevention plan. And it does have, if you dig through there, it'll talk about the independent contractor versus employee issue for sure.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
And as we start to wrap up, and we talked a little bit about this last week as well, is there any feedback or guidance you want to chat with our small business owners about this vaccine? Making people do it, not making them do it. How can employers be really safe when it comes to that vaccine? And it is a little bit controversial, and so we want people to be as careful as possible.
Right, right. I can't speak as a scientist. There are lots of debates about whether the vaccine completely prohibits you from getting COVID or whether it won't be as bad. So as far as the vaccine, the DFEH, the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, did issue a statement that employers can make it mandatory, subject to two exceptions we discussed last week, medical condition and religious exemption. Now, the challenge is, as we discussed, Katie, if employer makes it mandatory and then the employee say, well, I have a medical condition, and the employer says, what's your medical condition? Or the employee later complains because they had a reaction to the vaccination and they say, well, I shouldn't have been forced to do it. And the employer says, well, I saw this DFEH statement. Well, that's not necessarily a complete defense. The employee could still have some claims. So I say offer it as a reward. If everybody gets their vaccines, we can relax the restrictions a little bit in the workplace because they are relaxed as to not you can't take off your mask completely, but sometimes you can take off the mask if you're a certain distance away from each other. So that's a reward. How about that?
It is. And I love the way you look out for our small businesses and the employers and the employees as a whole. We just appreciate all of your guidance and advice and explaining everything because, our businesses, especially right now, are just working so hard to get by. To have you come on and help share your expertise is so valuable. We just can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Katie. I'm just so glad people are reopening and we're going to be free soon, and I can feel it. I can feel the energy in the community. So congratulations to you on providing this help too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, happy to. With people like you, I just provide the platform and you share your expertise. And I know this goes far. So we appreciate your time today. We'll have you back again. I do miss some of the events we would get to have together where you would talk about all of those new laws every year. So we'll get back to things like that. But for now, appreciate your time today and definitely wish you well.
Thank you very much, Katie. You too. Take care.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon. And thanks so much for joining us today. Karen Sloat is amazing. I've had the pleasure of working with her for years. And typically what we would do in a regular year is have a luncheon or a breakfast, and she would come on out and talk about all of those new laws and labor laws. So thanks so much for tuning in here and learning a little bit more. And like I said, we'll get back to doing some of those normal trainings. And I love the ability to be able to do it virtually as well because that works for a lot of folks too. If there's a way that we can support you professionally or your business, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Rancho Mirage Chamber of Commerce. And I just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, NBC Palm Springs. We'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care. Bye.